You are listening to Insurance Untangled podcast, where we explore the various challenges faced by dental practices due to their reliance on insurance. In this podcast, we dive deep into the issues surrounding dental insurance dependence and offer practical solutions and strategies for reducing your reliance on insurance. Join us as we interview industry experts, share success stories, and provide valuable insights to help you take control of your practice's financial future.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. I am Narain Arul Raja, one of the co-hosts of this podcast. Here we are dedicated to helping practices that are tangled up with insurance. We talk about topics that help you take more control and create a bigger and better future for you, your patients, and of course, your team members. Today, my guest is Ben Tune, my dear friend, and we will be talking about what is a healthy collection rate to maintain in a dental office. What is a healthy collection rate to maintain in a dental office? Ben, welcome back. How are you doing?
Hey, Naren, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween as we record this.
Well, yeah, for today, it's Halloween. You probably hear this way after Halloween, but hopefully everybody, including you, Naren, enjoys the festivities today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say, I know my wife is getting ready because, we'll get an army of kids marching in. They
always
demanding
do.
candy. So, so we'll have to we have to get the candy, and then we have to be there just to, hand it out. So
in years past, we used to buy, the Costco bags of candy, like the really good stuff. We used to buy like 4 or 5 of those big packs. And then we would buy the big candy bars for the teenagers, because usually in our communities, it's the teenagers that give out the candy, between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And then the teenagers go out after that. So we used to reward them with the larger candy bars. This year, we only have 1 bag of candy. We feel like
where my wife is at right now, she's at the Costco. So I guess she's
there you go. Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Let's dive deep into this topic. What is a healthy collection rate to maintain in a dental office? The first question I have for you, Ben, is it possible to collect 100% of what you produce? Meaning, I'm talking about not your usual and customary fees, because of course, insurance won't pay that to you. They'll only pay a portion of it. But I'm talking about what you are supposed to get paid. Can you collect 100% of that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in my short career in dentistry since 2007, I've yet to see a practice maintain 100% of their actual production, right? Which is, billing out procedures against their standard office fees. Even fee-for-service practices tend to do some write-offs here and there, right? You have certain discounts that you give to people, certain courtesy breaks. For me, I think, even for my business, we don't always collect our standard fee, right? We negotiate with people, and we allow people to negotiate with us in an effort for us to close the deal. Is we do provide that level of flexibility, and naturally so, the businesses tend to thrive with those flexible financial policies, right, where you're not collecting 100%. So when it comes to standard office fees, if that's what we're measuring collections against, it is possible. But the question I always have is, at what cost are you maintaining that 100%? I'm quite certain that there are practices that do collect 100%. But for me, as a business owner myself, 100% is most certainly a good objective, but you still have to have some level of flexibility to negotiate with especially with patients that can't afford treatment, right? There's some give back towards the community. That's just me personally. So to answer your question, it's yes and no.
Right. So I guess my experience, and again, I would like your comment on this, Ben. My experience is if you are a PPO practice, you could be writing off 45% of what you produce because of the write-off between your UCR fee and what the insurance company pays you, right? 45%. So let's say if you're doing $1.5 million in productions, you could be easily writing off $500,000 in. So that means you will only collect best case $1 million. So out of the 1.5 million, $500,000 is the write-off because of the adjustment between your UCR fee and the what the insurance company pays you versus what, so you lose $500,000. But if it's a fee-for-service practice, or maybe you only have one PPO plan, maybe with 10%, 20% of your patients only in that PPO plan, that number could be like 90%. So in other words, you could produce $1 million, and if you're a fully PPO practice, you might end up collecting 900,000. Where does that 100,000 go? Could be a membership plan, and you are giving some discounts on that membership plan, or could be friends and employees of your practice, their families get low priced or at cost dental treatment. So there could be a few write-offs like that for people people you care about, and so forth. So I guess the question is, how much of a write-off are you willing to take? Is it 400,000? I mean, $500,000, or is it 100,000? If you don't want to take $500,000, I think you need to then, of course, beef up marketing and reduce your dependence on these PPO plans. Any comments?
Yeah, I agree with that, in terms of, what you said with regards to the write-off standard. It's interesting when you look at dental practices, everybody has a different way of running a business, right? You have some practices, when they submit claims to insurance, they're submitting their standard office fees, right? So naturally, when you collect what you need to collect on that treatment, there's a write-off, which, as you mentioned, they're in between 30 and 50%, sometimes higher. And then other practices that when they submit claims to insurance, they're submitting the PPO fees. So at the end of the day, there's no write-off, right? Because that's the standard.
I mean, there is a write-off, but it doesn't show up as a write-off because you are not, you're only using
Correct.
the PPO fee as your fee, as opposed to using your UCR fee as your fee, your usual and customary fee as your, It's just how you do your accounting. But technically there is always a write-off. It's just, do you want to show it or do you not want to show it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so the question is how does that negatively impact you as a practice? So to me, you have that write-off that you can't escape. What you can minimize it as an in-network provider. And so some of the best practices in terms of maintaining the highest collectible rate is making sure that your fees are set at an appropriate standard. I mean, you see practices all the time that are their full fees, office fees, are in the 30th percentile, and they wonder why their PPO fees are in the 20th percentile, or lower.
Right.
And those things sort of correlate over time, especially when you're dealing with traditional dental plans like Delta Dental, the Delta Premier contracts. You do see those patterns where practices that maintain a higher level of fees usually saw their reimbursement rates increase over time, right? Whereas practices that did the opposite, they didn't really get fee increases. So yeah, you do experience a write-off. That is 100% true, no matter how you do your admin. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is you got to be careful with how you deal with insurance. Like if you're submitting PPO fees, the interpretation among the insurance is that's your standard office fee. So we're going to assess the percentiles of your next fee increase against that, right? Now you shot yourself in the foot in the sense that you've given the insurance companies an argument to use against you, right? Because they believe that your standard of fees meets what their allowables are, what their in-network fees are. So it's an interesting conversation to have there when you talk about collection standards and write-offs. To me, I think the bottom line is raising the bar on what you get to collect, regardless of whether you participate with insurance or not.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch gears a bit. So let's assume, regardless of how you do your accounting, whether you're writing your UCR fees into your system or whether you are only writing your PPO fees into your systems, right? What they pay you. You still want to collect every dollar owed from both the insurance companies and patients, correct?
Yes.
Let's say insurance company owes you, I'm making it a round number, $500,000. Let's say your patients owe you $300,000. You want to collect that 500 and that 300,000, right? So from that perspective, right, what is collectible production? So let's say you have a collectible production of this particular example of 800,000. You might have done $1.2 million in dentistry, but you can only collect 800,000. So of that 800,000, what percentage do you think a practice should aim to collect?
So 800,000 is the collectible production, right? What you're legally entitled to collect.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. So we'll call that collectible production. So of that number, Naren, that $800,000. Now this is coming from every CPA that specializes in dentistry that I know. Including our mutual friend Alan Schiff, and Owens and Bondell, who we did the webinar with last Friday. Their recommendation is that 98% is a good standard to maintain, right? Recognizing that there are going to be some situations where you have to give additional breaks or patients just don't pay, right? So 98% of collectible production is what I believe that they recommend, which I agree with is a good standard. I remember when I was running a dental group in the past, we at one point our collections against what we could collect, right, our in-network fees, I think we were hovering at 60%. And naturally that's a big issue, because 100% collections off of that $800,000 figure that you mentioned, there's still a 40% write-off on top of that, right?
Right.
So if you're giving away more than 2% out of that 800,000, you are unnecessarily increasing the write-offs, the additional write-offs that you're incurring, right? So 98% is the standard that I've used over my career, and I found that in most practices that have good collection policies, 98 to 100% is what most of them experience, especially those that are in network. The write-off is a sufficient enough of a discount, right? We don't give any discounts beyond that write-off. So in theory, 100% collections, if you are a PPO provider, would be ideal, although you have to have some room for mistakes and errors, which that 2% margin seems to be what that is, right? Mistakes and errors on the treatment planning, or forgiveness for patients that just don't pay their bills, which everybody does experience from time to time.
Right. So you're saying 98% of that 800,000 is a good goal.
Yes, correct. Good goal.
Right.
800,000 if you can do it, but 2% is the margin of error there that we typically see, is a healthy margin of error.
What are some of the most common mistakes for those that are well under that 98% threshold of collectible production?
Oh yeah, gosh. I deal with this on a day-to-day basis. It all starts with the very beginning, right? You take a new patient phone call, you collect the insurance information from the patient, and many practices don't actually do any level of verification on what's available for that patient, right? From an insurance coverage perspective. And so a lot of times practices will accept new patients, and then when they file insurance, they run into issues such as, well, the one that's kind of laughable is that the EOB will come back and say this patient has an HMO plan, and they should have seen an HMO provider because there's no out-of-network benefits, right? So you could pursue the patient for collections, but the vast majority of the time, the patient can argue informed consent, right? I didn't know. It's like, I had no idea. I tried to do the best that I can, and you told me that I could come to your practice, so I'm not going to pay you anything. And that's an unfortunate situation that does happen a lot. The other one, Naren, as a result of not doing your verifications thoroughly and properly, is that you do tend to see out-of-pocket estimates on low, right? Especially if you're dealing with a downgrade. You do a composite on a posterior tooth, and you have no idea that it's going to be downgraded to amalgam. So naturally, there's a difference that the patients should pay at the time of treatment, but the practices don't know that, right? Because they're not verifying benefits, and they just do their best to collect from the patient according to what they think is best, or what they, in their minds, what they know is best, but they fall short, right? So a $10 balance that's left, many practices, when they send those statements out, a lot of patients don't pay them, right? And then we tend to write those components off as well. So good collection practices are important, that start with knowing what's covered by the patient, creating good estimated out-of-pocket for those patients, and then as well as knowing exactly how that plan works for that patient, so you don't give the patient a quote that is below what they need to pay. Because when the patient walks out the door, your ability to collect at that point, it diminishes significantly. So you kind of have to strike while the iron is hot and do a good job at that function of insurance administration from the point that the patient calls to schedule an appointment with you. So I'm kind of describing this whole complex world of insurance administration, Naren, which at the end of the day is If your insurance administration is designed for you to have estimates for the patient that are spot on, or in my opinion, taking it a little further, and your estimate is likely leaning on the higher end of things, meaning you're running a risk of over collecting from the patient, and that's not illegal to do, so long as when the EOB comes back, you reconcile that and correct it, right, with a refund or a credit back to the patient. But the point is that you should never run risk of sending statements out to patients, right? Because when the patients aren't there, naturally you have a lower rate of collecting from people when you're sending statements out. Sending credits and refunds, oh gosh, patients love that, right? So that's been my philosophy. That's actually what we did in the demo group, is we started collecting up front. We started estimating high on a procedure that we thought is likely going to be downgraded. And we sent 0 statements out to patients. So we did go from that 60% collections to 98%, doing that particular activity where the main focus was we got to collect up front and not leave anything to statements, right? If we're going to send a statement out to a patient, it's going to be a credit or a refund notice, not a collection statement. And that did wonders in terms of, bridging that gap from 60 to 98%.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. This is awesome. This is really good tips. Really appreciate it, Ben. What are some of the resources or next steps if somebody really wants to work on their collections that you would recommend?
Absolutely. What comes to mind is our mutual friend, Morgan Millette, front office friends.
Yes.
I bought her manual. Gosh, it would have been about a year to a year and a half ago. And I've read through it, and I've learned, actually, I think I have a few more years of experience than Morgan, but she actually taught me quite a few new things. And this is the wonderful thing about being a student of the game, is that no matter if you've been in the industry for 40 years or for 5 years, we're going to learn something from each other, right? Because we all have unique experiences. So Morgan's front office friends website and the courses and manuals that she provides, in my opinion, are some of the best that are out there. So her website is frontofficefriends.com. Check out her courses, where you'll find specific insurance-related courses on collections that are very, very helpful.
Makes sense. Thank you so much, Ben. Really appreciate it. We'll put that resource from Morgan's website, Front Office Friend. If you go to the chat notes of the podcast, you'll be able to, grab it. I also want to take a moment to thank all of you who have made this Insurance Untangled podcast a huge success. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to share it with your friends and on social media. We also appreciate your reviews. So any review on iTunes, Google Play, that would help other practice owners and doctors find us. So thank you for those as well. And of course, the website is insuranceuntangleded.com. You can go there to get resources, show notes, find out, look at all the past episodes, and even like freebies we have been able to share over the months. So go to insuranceuntangleded.com and get all the resources. Till we meet again, have a wonderful, amazing week ahead.